Story 1, they're digging tunnels under our town at night. Low, tense, ambient sounds begin. The voice of the narrator enters. Calm, conversational, but uneasy. You ever hear something outside your window at night that you can't explain? I'm not talking about a raccoon or a passing car or your neighbor taking out the trash at midnight. I'm talking about a sound that feels wrong. Like the earth itself is moving beneath your house. That's what started happening here. In Pine Hollow, Ohio, population just under 3,000, we started hearing noises, low rumbling sounds, the kind that make your glass of water tremble on the nightstand. At first, people said it was construction, gas lines maybe, but that didn't make sense. Nobody worked that late, and it wasn't happening in the day. Only after dark, I didn't believe it at first, until I heard it myself. And now, I can't stop hearing it. It started about 6 months ago. My name's Evan Miller. I work as a mechanic at a small shop off Highway 22, right across from the old Pine Hollow diner. My wife, Claire, teaches 3rd grade at the elementary school. We just put our daughter, Lucy, to bed. When I first noticed it, it was a little after midnight. I'd been sitting in the living room scrolling through my phone when I felt this vibration under my feet. Not strong, just enough to make the lamp on the end table flicker. At first, I thought it was an earthquake, but we don't get earthquakes in Ohio. So I muted the TV, and that's when I heard it. A deep, rhythmic thudding coming from beneath the floorboards, like something was pounding against the earth. Far below, I remember calling out to Claire, half laughing, "Hey, you feel that? You hear that noise?" She didn't. And when she came out, the sound had stopped. Over the next few nights, it happened again. Always after midnight. Always for a few minutes. Then about a week later, I heard something new. Voices, faint, muffled, like a conversation happening through a wall of dirt. I couldn't make out the words, but it was definitely human, low, urgent. The next morning, I went outside. I expected to see maybe a gas company truck or some sign of digging, but there was nothing. No tire tracks, no disturbed soil. That's when I started asking around. At the diner, old Martha Greer told me her basement walls had started cracking. A few of her shelves had fallen off in the night. She swore she heard metal scraping under her house. Then John Sutter, the guy who runs the hardware store, said his dog had gone crazy barking at the ground near the backyard fence. When he went out there, the dirt was warm. He said it felt like something had been moving under it, and it wasn't just me. Half the town had been hearing the same noises, rumbling, pounding, the ground shaking lightly around 1 or 2 a.m. People called the county, the city, even the police. Everyone got the same answer. There's no record of any construction or underground work in your area. That's when things got stranger. Claire came home from school one afternoon, pale as a ghost. She told me one of her students, an 8-year-old named Tommy, said his dad worked in the night tunnels. When she asked what he meant, he said, "They dig under the houses while everyone's sleeping." She thought it was a weird story until she asked who they were. And Tommy said, "The men with the flashlights. They come out when the moon is gone." I laughed at first. Kids make things up all the time. But that night, I couldn't stop thinking about it, so I stayed up around 12:45. It started again. The low rumble, the faint pounding, but this time I didn't just listen. I went outside. The air was cold, the kind of damp chill you feel in your lungs. The street was quiet. Then I heard it coming from the woods behind our subdivision. A metallic sound, like shovels hitting stone. I followed it. I don't know why, I just did. There was a faint glow ahead, deep between the trees, flashlights, maybe 4 or 5 of them moving in a slow circle. I crept closer until I saw it. A hole, a massive, freshly dug tunnel opening in the earth, about 6 feet across. And people, at least a dozen, standing around it wearing dirty orange work suits, faces hidden behind headlamps. They weren't talking. They were chanting, low, rhythmic, almost like humming. Then one of them climbed down into the hole. The others followed. I didn't move. I just stood there staring, and that's when one of them turned his head directly toward me. The beam of his headlamp landed right on my face. I bolted. I ran through the woods, tripping, tearing my jeans on branches until I reached my backyard. I didn't look back. That night I locked every door, every window. The next morning, the woods were empty. No hole, no footprints, just smooth, packed earth, like nothing had ever happened. I tried to tell the police. They sent a deputy out. Deputy Rowan, I think his name was. He gave me that look, you know. The "you've been up too late" kind of look. He checked the woods, came back 10 minutes later and said, "Sir, there's nothing out there. Probably just kids messing around, except kids don't move that much dirt overnight." For a few days, I tried to forget about it. Then Lucy started talking about the people in the basement. She said they whisper to her when she's trying to sleep. I told her it was a dream, until I heard them too. That night around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of someone knocking. Not on the door. On the floor, 3 slow knocks, then silence. I pressed my ear to the hardwood, and I swear, I heard breathing. By morning, I was done pretending it wasn't real. I called my friend Mike, who works construction. Told him I needed to know if anyone was running tunnels or pipelines in our area. He checked. Came back an hour later, said there's nothing, and there used to be. He pulled up an old map, dated 1947. Pine Hollow was built on top of a military testing ground. Back then, the Army Corps of Engineers had built a network of underground tunnels to store chemical waste. They sealed it all off after a fire in 1951. Or at least, they said they did. That night I went back into the woods. This time I brought a flashlight and a crowbar. About 50 yards in, near an old oak tree, I found a patch of dirt that looked different, looser, like it had been dug up and refilled. I started digging. 5 minutes in, I hit metal. A heavy, rusted hatch, like a submarine door. There was a faded emblem painted on it. U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The handle was stiff, but it moved. When it popped open, a wave of hot, stale air poured out, smelling like rust and something rotten. I pointed the flashlight down and saw stairs. Concrete stairs leading into the dark. I don't know why, but I went down. Every step echoed. There were pipes running along the ceiling, dripping, and then I heard the voices again. Closer this time, talking, arguing. I turned the corner and froze. The tunnel opened into a massive underground chamber, and there they were, dozens of people, some wearing those same orange suits, others in tattered clothes, barefoot, their eyes wide and unfocused. They were digging into the walls, into the floor, into the very foundation of the town. In the center of the chamber was something else, a machine. It looked old, military grade, like some kind of drilling rig, but it was running, humming with a deep mechanical pulse that vibrated through the floor, and behind it, there was movement. Something was inside the wall, something big. It shifted almost like it was breathing. A sound came out of it, low, wet, and deep, like the growl of something ancient waking up. One of the workers saw me. He dropped his shovel, shouted something. I turned and ran. Didn't stop until I burst out of the hatch and collapsed in the grass, gasping for air. When I looked back, the hatch was gone. Just smooth earth again. I tried to tell people. The police, the mayor, even the local paper. Nobody believed me, but now everyone hears it. Every night the ground shakes harder. Houses are cracking. Dogs won't stop barking. And last night the air smelled like metal and blood. I went into town this morning, and half the main road was fenced off. No workers, no vehicles, just fresh piles of dirt and holes big enough to swallow a car. When I asked what was going on, the deputy just said, "Stay inside tonight." That's it. It's almost midnight now. Claire's asleep with Lucy. I can hear it again, the rumble. The floor is shaking. The walls are vibrating. I looked out the window and saw lights in the distance. Not headlights, flashlights, moving in a line. They're coming closer. There's a knock at the door. Not 3 knocks this time. Just one, slow, heavy, the kind that rattles your ribs. And from beneath the house, I can hear something calling my name. Pauses, voice trembling. It's not a voice I recognize. It's deeper, older, I think. I think whatever they've been digging for, they finally found it. A faint rumble, then silence. If you're hearing this, don't go outside. Don't look out the window. And whatever you do, don't answer the knock, because they're not digging tunnels anymore. They're digging up. Audio fades to static. The final words come through distorted, whispered. Pine Hollow will open again.
Story 2. I don't care if you believe me. I just need someone to hear this before I go back in there tomorrow. Because after what she said to me last night, I'm starting to think my therapist might not be who she says she is. It started 3 months ago. My name's Adam Forster. I'm 31. I live in Lansing, Michigan. I started therapy after my brother Eli died last year. Car accident, at least. That's what they told us. But there were things about it that didn't make sense. No skid marks. No brake lights. No reason for him to be driving out that late anyway. I wasn't sleeping. Couldn't focus at work. My girlfriend, Rachel, said I'd wake up in the middle of the night talking to someone who wasn't there. So, she found me a therapist. Her name was Dr. Elaine Porter. She ran a private practice out of a converted house on the east side of town. The kind of place that smelled like peppermint tea and old books. At first, she seemed normal, kind, patient, calm. She had this way of making you talk before you even realized you were talking. You know what I mean. But around the 4th session, something changed. It started when she asked about a memory I'd never mentioned. She leaned forward in that soft, measured voice therapists use and said, "Adam, when did you stop going into the basement?" I remember blinking at her like she'd said something in another language. "What basement?" I asked. She smiled. "The one in your parents' old house. The one you used to hide in with Eli." My throat went dry. I hadn't told her about that. No, I hadn't thought about that basement in years. It was where Eli and I used to play when we were kids. Dark, cold, half-finished. Our parents told us not to go down there after sunset because of the old wiring. But we went anyway. Kids do stupid stuff. We'd built a little fort down there with sheets and flashlights. We used to say there was something living in the walls. We called it the listener. Just dumb kid stuff. But the way she said it like she already knew made my stomach twist. "How do you know about that?" I asked. She tilted her head and said, "You told me in your intake sessions." Except I hadn't. I checked the notes I wrote in my phone that night. I'd mentioned the accident, my anxiety, my insomnia. Nothing about the basement. After that, every session got stranger. She started finishing my sentences. Not in a we're connecting kind of way, more like she already knew what I was going to say. Sometimes she'd ask questions that didn't feel like therapy questions. Stuff like, when you dream, does Eli stand on your left or your right paw? Do you still hear the scratching? The first time she said that, I froze. What scratching? She smiled again. Never mind. Let's stay in the moment. But after that, I did start hearing it. Late at night, lying in bed, half asleep. I'd hear faint scratching behind the walls, under the floor. Rachel said it was mice. But deep down, I knew it WASN single quote, because sometimes it would stop the second I moved. And once, I swear, I heard it say my name. One night after a session, I stayed up watching old home videos on my laptop. My mum used to record everything: birthdays, Christmas mornings, school plays, in one. From 2001, Eli and I were in were laughing, shining flashlights at the camera. Then Eli looks over my shoulder and says, he's listening. The camera pans slightly, and for a split second, there's something in the corner like a shadow that's too tall, too thin dot, and then the tape cuts out. I stared at the frozen frame for an hour. The timestamp said 9:41 p.m. When I checked my phone, it was 9:41 p.m. exactly. The next session, I asked her about it. Do you believe people can share dreams? I said. She smiled that same slow smile. With the right connection, yes. Then she reached under her desk and pulled out a small tape recorder. Old school. The kind with actual buttons and a red record light. She hit play. I heard my own voice. He's listening through the floor. Eli, don't let him come upstairs. I grabbed the recorder, stopped it, stared at her. When the hell did you record this? She folded her hands. You said it during your second session, but that wasn't true. I would have remembered saying something like that, wouldn't I? That night, Rachel asked if I was okay. I told her what happened. She looked confused. Who's Dr. Porter? She asked. My therapist, I said. She frowned. Adam, you stopped going to therapy weeks ago. I thought she was joking. But she showed me the calendar app on my phone. There were no appointments scheduled since early August. The receipts I'd been keeping in my glove compartment gone. The texts from her office deleted. She told me. I'd been driving to an empty building. We argued about it until 2 a.m. I showed her the address, and she said that place burned down 10 years ago. I drove there myself the next morning, and she was right. The house was a charred shell. No sign, no furniture. Just blackened wood and the smell of smoke. The only thing left intact was a small brass plaque by the front step. It said, Dr. Elaine Porter, Clinical Psychology, Est 1989. The metal was cold, put to cold. I told myself I'd imagined it all, that maybe the stress had finally broken something in me. But that night, the scratching came back, louder, faster, angry. Then I heard a whisper, low and wet, coming from under the bed. It said, why did you tell her? I jumped up, turned on every light. Nothing there. Rachel begged me to sleep in the living room. I tried, but around 3 a.m., the TV turned on by itself. Static, then, through the noise. I heard her voice, Dr. Porter's. She said, Adam, stop digging. You don't want to remember what really happened down there. The next day, I went to the county records office. I asked for any info on Dr. Elaine Porter. The clerk squinted at the computer. After a minute, she said, there was an Elaine Porter, practiced here until 1997. 1997, I said. She died in a gas leak accident. In her office, my stomach dropped. By the same address. I left my phone on the car seat and drove straight to my parents' old house. The basement door was still padlocked. My mum never had the heart to open it after we moved. I broke the lock. The air that came out smelled like damp concrete and rot. The flashlight flickered as I stepped down. The old fort was still there, sheets, wooden crates. rusted folding chairs, and on the wall, written in black marker, were the words, "She's under the stairs." Something shifted behind me, the sound like gravel rolling over metal. I turned the light toward the corner. There was a shape crouched there, small, pale, wrong. I thought it was an animal until it stood up, and in that flickering beam, I saw my brother's face. Half of it, anyway. The other half looked burned. He didn't blink, didn't breathe, just whispered. She made me remember. Then he stepped forward, and I saw his hands covered in dirt. Fresh dirt. I stumbled back and fell against the stairs. The flashlight hit the ground, and everything went black. When I came to, I was in my car, parked outside my apartment. It was morning. There was dirt under my nails, and on the passenger seat was the tape recorder. No explanation. Just the same red light blinking. I pressed play. Dr. Porter's voice came through .com as ever. Good job, Adam. Now that you've found him, we can begin the real one. Then my own voice, shaking, whispered, "What do you want from me?" And she said, the one still listening. I don't remember turning it off. But when I looked up, I realized the recorder wasn't in my hand anymore. It was on the floor. And the red light was still blinking. Only now, it was recording. There was no one else in the car, but through the speakers, I could hear a breathe, not mine. Something deeper. I reached over and hit stop, but before the sound cut, I heard her voice again. Don't try to erase it. Adam, you invited me in the moment you spoke my name. That was last night. Rachel's gone. I don't know where. The scratches have moved to the ceiling now. I think she's in the vents. Tomorrow morning, I have another session scheduled. I didn't make the appointment, but it appeared on my calendar sometime after midnight. The address is different. Same name. Dr. Elaine Porter. Office 3B, Memorial Hospital basement. I tried to delete it, but my phone froze. And then, in the reflection of the screen, I swear I saw someone standing. A woman smiled. Her eyes black. She whispered something. "I can't get out of my head," she said. "You were never my patient, Adam. You were the experiment. If anyone finds this recording, don't look her up. Don't say her name out loud. Because once you do, she knows where to find you. And when she does, she'll ask you one question. The same one she asked me before everything went black. Do you still hear the scratching? Long pause, faint static. Then, almost imperceptibly, a woman's voice whispering, "Good. Then we can begin." Story 3. You ever drive past a house that just feels wrong? Like you don't even have to go inside to know something in there isn't right. That's what the blue house at the end of Maragold Lane was like. People in my town, Ash Creek, Kentucky, better than to go near it after dark. Everyone said the same thing. Don't knock on that blue house at night. No one explained why. They just said it like it was a rule. Like look both ways before crossing, or don't stick your hand on a stove. And for 22 years, I never questioned it. Until one night last summer, when my idiot friend decided to knock Dot. My name's Daniel Brooks, but everyone calls me Danny. I grew up on the south side of Ash Creek small town. Maybe 4,000 people, surrounded by woods and a river that floods every spring. Maragold Lane was one of those quiet old roads at the edge of town lined with sagging mailboxes and houses built in the 1950s. And at the very end of that road stood the Blue House. It wasn't bright blue more, like faded, peeling navy, with white shutters that hung crooked. The grass was always overgrown, the mailbox half rusted and shut. No one lived there, or at least no one anyone ever saw. But at night, people said lights came on inside. And sometimes, if you got close enough, you'd hear someone crying. I first heard the story from my mum when I was a kid. We were driving past one evening, windows up, and I remember asking, "Why's that house empty?" She didn't even glance at it. She just said, "Danny, don't ever go near that place, and don't knock on that door, especially after dark." Her tone wasn't angry, it was scared. I'd never heard her sound that way before. When I pressed her, she said, "A family used to live there, the Holts. The dad was a truck driver, the mum worked at the diner, and they had a little girl named Carl, about my age. Then, one night in 1998, the dad came home early and found the front door wide open inside. Every light was off. He called for his wife, called for Carly. No answer. Then he saw the back door cracked open just enough to let in the moonlight. He went out back and saw 3 sets of muddy footprints in the grass, leading away from the porch, and only to sets coming back. They found him 2 days later in the woods behind the house. He was sitting upright against a tree, eyes wide open, like he'd seen something that broke him. He never spoke again. His wife and daughter were never found. The house was sold, then abandoned again a year later. Everyone who tried to live there said they couldn't sleep, said they heard knocking from inside the walls. Fast forward to last July. My friends Eddie and Melissa had come over for the weekend. We were 24, bored, drinking on my porch like usual. And of course, Eddie, who's never been scared of anything except commitment, starts talking about the Blue House Challenge. Apparently, it's a dumb local day. You drive up to the Blue House after midnight, knock 3 times on the front door, and say, "Who's home?" Carly. If no one answers, you win. If someone does, you're supposed to run. I laughed it off. Melissa didn't. She looked genuinely freaked out. She said her cousin tried it once in high school and came home the next morning with scratches all over his neck. Said he wouldn't talk about it. Eddie just grinned. "Guess we'll find out," he said, holding up his car keys. We got there around 12:37 a.m. It was humid, the air heavy with that late summer smell of wet grass and asphalt. The house looked even worse up close. The paint had bubbled and cracked, the porch sagged in the middle, and the windows were dark except for one, the upstairs left. It was faint, but I swear I saw a light flicker behind the curtain. Melissa refused to get out of the car. I didn't blame her, but Eddie already halfway up the driveway, flashlight in hand. He turned to me and called, "Come on, man, don't be a chicken." So, of course, I followed him. The porch creaked under our feet. There was a strange smell, metallic like rust or old blood. The door was painted the same faded blue as the house, and dead center, about eye level, was a single HANDPRINT dot. It looked smeared, almost like it had been pressed there from the inside. Eddie laughed nervously and raised his hand. 1, 2, pre. He knocked. The sound echoed through the empty house like it went on forever. Then he said it. "Who's home?" Calming. Nothing. Just the sound of crickets. He smirked at me. "See, no ghosts. Let's go." But then from somewhere deep inside the house, we heard it knock, knock, knock. Dot slow, deliberate. From inside, Eddie froze. I whispered, "Dude, let's get out of here." But before I could grab him, the door creaked open. Just an inch, just enough for the smell to hit us. Dot rolled down. Something sweet underneath, like spoiled fruit. Eddie shined his flashlight through the crack. "Hello?" No answer. Just that awful smell getting stronger then. From upstairs, a soft voice. "Who's home?" I didn't wait. I ran straight to the car, yelling for Eddie. Melissa was already crying, fumbling with the locks, but Eddie didn't come out. The porch light flickered once, then went out, and in the glow of the headlights, I saw movement in the doorway. A small shadow stepping forward. It looked like a little girl. Bare feet, white dress. She raised her hand and waved. I screamed for Eddie again. He didn't answer. The girl tilted her head and smiled. Then she whispered, "You knocked." The front door slammed shut so hard the windows rattled. I don't remember much after that. Melissa said I drove 80 miles an hour back to my house, screaming the whole way. Eddie's phone stopped pinging around 1:04 a.m. right after the last text he sent me. "She's behind you." The police searched the house the next day. No sign of him. But they found 3 sets of muddy footprints leading from the porch to the living room. And only 2 sets coming back for weeks. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard knocking. Sometimes from the walls, sometimes from under the bed. Then, one night, there was a sound at my front door. 3 knocks. I froze. Didn't move. Didn't breathe. Then, in a voice that sounded almost like a child's, I heard it. "Who's home?" "Danny." I didn't open it. I just sat there, staring at the door until sunrise. When I finally looked through the peephole, there were 3 small, muddy handprints on the glass. The cops never found Eddie. But a month later, a realtor put the blue house up for sale. They repainted it, cleaned the roof, even fixed the shutters. It looks almost normal, except every night. Around 12:30, the upstairs light flickers on. And if you listen closely, you can still hear knocking. 3 slow knocks. Then silence. So, if you ever find yourself driving down Maragold Lane, and you see that blue house, keep going. Don't stop. Don't slow down. And whatever you do, don't knock. because sometimes when you call out to the dead, they answer. Long pause. Faint knocking sound fades in, followed by a whisper. Play. Story for you ever taken a hike alone and felt like the woods were watching you, like every step you took just made the forest shift a little, until you weren't sure if you were walking the same path anymore. Yeah, that's what happened to me. Except the trail didn't just feel different. It was different. And I swear to you, it still hasn't let me go. It started 2 weekends ago. My name's Ryan Carter. I'm from Asheville, North Carolina. I hike every other Sunday to clear my Head Blue Ridge trails, mostly. But that morning, I decided to try a new path I'd found online, the Hollow Creek Loop. The reviews said it was quiet, beautiful, barely trafficked. Hidden gem, one person wrote. But the weird part, the post was deleted the next day. Anyway, I packed my bag, grabbed my hydro flask, and drove about an hour out of town. It was one of those early spring mornings where the fog clings low, like it's waiting for something. The kind of quiet that makes you check if your phone's still working. The trailhead was barely marked, just a crooked wooden sign with faded blue paint that said Hollow Creek. The dirt path was narrow, swallowed by trees that leaned in over it like they were whispering. And right from the first few steps, I noticed something off that the forest smelled wrong. Normally, you get pine, wet earth, maybe wildflowers. But here, it was like old iron metallic, sharp, like dried blood. I thought maybe it was runoff from the creek or some kind of mineral in the soil. But that smell followed me, deeper and deeper, and then, maybe 30 minutes in, I heard singing. It was faint at first, like someone humming through a wall, high, soft, and slow. I froze, trying to figure out where it was coming from. It sounded like it was ahead of me, but the moment I stopped moving, the singing stopped too. That's when I realized I hadn't seen anyone on the trail since I started. No hikers, no footprints, nothing. I told myself it was probably some local kid, maybe camping or fishing nearby. But the more I listened, the more it sounded like the voice was moving away, leading me off the main path. You ever have that instinct? Like every part of you is screaming, don't go there, but your body just keeps walking anyway. That's what it felt like. The trail split up ahead, followed the creek, right curved up into a ridge. The humming came from the right dot, so I went right. The deeper I went, the darker it got. The trees grew closer together, thicker, until it felt like the sunlight couldn't reach through anymore. I kept walking, and that humming kept echoing, always just out of reach. Then, about an hour in, I found something I still can't explain. The trail ended at a clearing perfectly circular, maybe 20 feet wide. The ground was smooth dirt, no leaves, no rocks, no footprints, like it had been wiped clean. Dot, and in the center was a wooden signpost. No writing, just nailed boards, painted that same faded blue I saw at the trailhead. Except this time, there were symbols carved into wooden signs, triangles, and what looked like eyes. I I bent down to look closer. The carvings were filled with something dark. I thought it was paint until I smelled it. Blood. That was the moment I decided to turn around. But when I tried to go back the way I came, the path wasn't there. I'm not talking. I lost my bearings. Kind of lost. I mean, it wasn't there. Where the trail should have been was just forest ends. Endless forest. I spun around, trying to retrace my steps, but everything looked the same. The trees, the moss, the ground, like the forest had rearranged itself while I was looking at the sun. That's when I started hearing footsteps. At first, soft crunching leaves, maybe 20 feet behind me. I called out, thinking maybe it was another hiker. No answer. Then the footsteps stopped, and from somewhere behind a tree, that humming started again. I didn't wait. I ran. Branches whipped my face. Roots tripped my feet. But I didn't stop until I found what looked like a path again. It wasn't the same. Trail it was wider, cleaner, and the dirt looked fresh, like someone had just laid it down. I followed it. Anything to get out. But the longer I walked, the stranger it got. The trees were thinning, but the ground was covered in more of those carved blue boards. Parvary in the dirt, like pieces of that sign. And every few feet, I found something else, a torn backpack strap, a dirty shoe, a cracked phone case. Then I saw it, a wooden cabin deep in the trees. It was painted the same pale blue. The humming was louder now, clearer. A woman's voice, old, soft, and cracked with age. She was singing something I couldn't make out, but it sounded like a lullaby. I don't know what made me walk closer. Maybe it was the shock. Maybe I thought she could help. The front door was half open, and that metallic smell thing now was pouring out inside. It looked like no one had lived there in decades. Dust everywhere. Furniture covered in sheets, except for one thing. In the middle of the room was a chair, and in that chair sat a woman with white hair down to her shoulders. Her back was to me. She was humming that same lullaby now. I said, my voice shaking, "Are you okay?" The humming stopped, but she didn't turn around. Then, in the quiet, I heard something else. By a soft scratching sound, coming from under the floorboards. I took a step closer and the woman spoke. Her voice was calm, like she'd been expecting me. "You shouldn't be..." "You followed the song," she said. "Just like the others." She finally turned her head slightly, and I swear to you, her eyes were completely black. Not like missing pupils, like the hole I was gone. Before I could move, the floor beneath me shifted. The wood creaked, then split open. I fell straight through into darkness. When I hit the bottom, I realized where I was under the cabin, a crawl space, but it wasn't empty. Rows of old rotten boards lined the dirt walls, each one painted that same faded blue. And in front of them were people, dozens of them, pressed, some sitting, some standing, all silent, all watching me. Their skin was grey, stretched thin. Their clothes modern, dirty, torn. One of them, a man maybe my age, whispered something I'll never forget. You have to. If you stop humming, she hears you. Then, from above, I heard the woman's voice, again this time louder, clearer. She was singing the same tune, and slowly, one by one, everyone around me started to hum along. Their lips moved in perfect unison. I tried to crawl backward, but something grabbed my ankle. I looked down and saw a hand, pale and stiff, coming up from the dirt. Then another, then dozens more. They pulled me down. The last thing I saw before everything went black was the underside of the cabin floor, splintered, and that same blue paint dripping down like it was bleeding. When I woke up, I was back at my car. My clothes were clean. My shoes were dry. My phone was on the seat, still recording the time. Only 30 minutes had passed. But here's the thing. When I checked the footage, it wasn't me holding the camera. The video showed the trail from behind me, like someone was filming the entire time I walked for the last few seconds. The camera tilts down. You can see my footprints stop in the dirt. Then the camera pans up to the trees, and there, standing just behind where I was that woman, Dot, smiling. I don't hike anymore. I deleted the footage, but sometimes, when I'm driving at night, I catch myself humming that same lullaby, and I swear, sometimes I hear another voice humming